Okay, let's add some functionality to our game, and let's start with the easiest one, which is probably the paddle. So I'm here in our main class, our base class. We've declared an object named paddle, lowercase p of type paddle, with a capital P, which is that file. Then in the initialization method for our applet, we've created that object, and that assigns some room to in memory for it. And this is also some parameters, if they were in here, to get our constructor started, and we'll learn about constructors soon. Then in the run method, we add the paddle, and then when the game's going on, we can move it left or right with those methods. I'm going to comment those out because we're not coding them yet. So let's execute and test it. So it runs, it waits for a click, and then that's all that happens because we haven't given our paddle any height or width or a color or a location on screen. So we're going to have to do that. Right now we just have two empty move ones. Now I talked a moment ago about a constructor. And a constructor, just like the name implies, it's when you build something such as an object, when it's created, if it has any default values that you want. That's what a constructor might be. If you notice this line, this G label has a constructor right here. That's a parameter we're going to pass to the constructor, which means the G label has a built-in, that's going to be the default string that's going to display. So whenever you see an object being created, anything in here is going to be for the constructor. We'll notice this. These are parameters for the add method. And then both paddle, ball, and blocks, those three, they don't have a constructor. So the computer will create a default one, which is basically empty. So what we want to do is create our paddle with a constructor that has all our basic things. Now, what's unique about a constructor is that it has the same name as the class. So if I compile that, it shouldn't give me any errors. So I could pass some values in here. Like say I wanted something specific, but we don't need to pass anything in because we're not really asking the users for any information. So our paddle itself is going to be a G rectangle. Excuse me. And we'll call it player paddle. And this is an object we've created, equals new grect. And that's probably going to be the location. So notice, or excuse me, that's going to be the height and width. So that's some construct parameters that are going to be sent over to the G rectangle, which we're getting from this graphics package. So it's prepared to accept some information. And we can do something like player paddle, set color, color.red, player paddle, set filled, true. Then we can add the player paddle. We'll set it maybe a little towards the middle. That's the X value. And then down the 500. And that is our constructor. So what that means is whenever we construct a paddle, such as over here, it's going to have these default characteristics. And remember, we can create as many objects of this as we need. So just like on Pong, we could have had two paddles made, but they might have had different constructors here. And what's also cool, I'll cover that later, but you can have more than one constructor. So let me compile this. I'll recompile that and execute it. Click to start, and there's our paddle. Notice our move methods do not work yet. Let's go back to paddle, and let's finish coding our move left and move right methods because they're very easy. Remember, it's just move, and we're only going to be moving on the x-axis. So -10 would be to the left. We'll keep y as 0. And if we move right, we'll just make that +10. So go ahead and stop here unless you want to learn about overriding constructors, which is what it means to have multiple constructors. So to have multiple constructors, let me just give you an example here, and I'm not going to keep this one in the program. I'm going to end up deleting it. But we'll add paddle 2. I'll copy this line. And notice that there's no constructor here. In that case, or no parameters, we might put in something like 75, 75, and see if we can do something with that by passing that information over. And we'll scroll down here, and we'll add paddle 2. I'm not going to compile that yet, because this would give me an error, since we're not ready to handle it. So the way that would work, we can have this very same one, but what has to be different is they have to have a different signature, meaning this has to be different if we're going to use more than one. So we could do something like integer x, comma integer y to receive those two. And the computer's going to know whether parameters are being passed. If no parameters are passed, it'll call this constructor. If parameters are being passed, meaning if we send two integers over, and this could be strings, doubles, whatever, it can even be an object. If it sees two parameters in there, it'll know to execute this one. So we might be able to change those values for our size. And I'm going to put this one in the middle of the screen. So let's compile that. Go back here, compile this. Click to start, and we get 2. It looks like we're calling our move methods repeatedly in the game loop. But the point is we did 2 different paddles based on the same class that are, in fact, different. So another instance you might use parameters for, or say you build a car, and we'll do that in another constructors tutorial in just a second.